Hi there, I'm Maddie Harvey. I'm a knitwear designer and knitting teacher based in Edinburgh. And hello if you're watching the replay, and hi there if you're watching live. I've come on this evening to talk a wee bit about my upcoming Trigpoint Shawl Mystery Knit-A-Long. And just to give people a little bit more information or a chance to ask some questions. I've got, there's a Facebook group running, so if you've bought the pattern, come and join the Facebook group. You'll find it, there's a link in the pattern, you'll find it via the link. And then you can, you have to answer a few questions to join. And there's a few little rules and things just to keep everybody safe. There's a wee tick box down at the bottom to say that you agree to the rules. So just make sure that you do all of that, and then I'll be able to make you a member of the group. And lots of people are in there sharing their yarn choices and a little bit of swatching and even some Trigpoint visiting. So if you fancy going out to visit a Trigpoint near where you live, taking a photograph of it, you could come and share it in the group. That would be great. I'm planning to do that maybe not this weekend because I'm teaching workshops, but next weekend I'm going to try and go out and find some trig points. So the Mystery Knit-A-Long, the pattern has launched. It's been launched for a week now, so you can buy a copy of the pattern just now, and what you'll get is an information sheet which gives you the sort of details that you need to know to get ready for the pattern. For the actual knitting instructions coming out. So the pattern is split into 4 different clues, so 4 different parts of the pattern, and the first one comes out on May the 7th. So it'll be each Friday in May you'll get the next part of the pattern. And you will also get, let me see if I can just grab this from under here. You will get no, that's not the right piece of paper. Here it is. You will get a sheet like this, which I'm calling a Knit Motivate sheet. So it's got lots of things in there for kind of a bit like a project planner, but also a place to tick off boxes when you've done various things. And it's got this fun little graphic, which a graphic designer has made for me, which is based on the kind of what you find on top of a Trigpoint pillar. So you can colour in each section when you finish a bit of the Mystery Knit-A-Long. I love ticking boxes off lists and things like that to keep me motivated, so I've tried to incorporate some of that into the pattern as well. So when people have been joining the Facebook group, there is a little optional question in there about if you have a question for me about the Mystery Knit-A-Long, and I've kind of collected all of those together so that I can answer them all in one. But if you've got another question, feel free to put it in the comments there, and I'll do my best to answer it. Now, I'm just looking around to see, because the first question that I've got here is about dividing the yarn up. So we're going to knit 2 halves of the shawl at the same time. So what I've suggested that you do is you need 2 colours. So I'm just picking up 2 that are on my desk here. So 2 colours, 2 100-gram skeins of fingering or 4-ply yarn that have got a good contrast between the tone. These 2 don't actually. They look quite contrasty just now, but they don't. When I put them through a sort of black and white photo filter, they're pretty much the same tone. So that means they've got the same sort of level of lightness or brightness to them. So they wouldn't actually be a good combination, but you do need 2 colours. So if you want to divide it, what I would say is weigh your skein before you start, because although skeins are labelled, say 100 grams, quite often they're a wee bit more than that. So just weigh them and write down, there's space on the Knit Motivate sheet that I just showed you. You can write down the weight and then work out what half of that would be, and then wind your yarn whichever way you prefer. If you wind by hand, then you can probably just wind and keep weighing what you're winding as you go until you get half, and then cut the yarn and then knit the other, wind up the other half. Or if you've got a winder, I would wind it into a cake. one cake first and then wind off half and keep weighing this one to make sure you've got half and half, because once you take the cake off the winder, it's not going back on because the little hole in the middle just closes up, doesn't it? So I would say wind it into one cake and then you could wind off half. Okay, and the thing about it being in two halves is good as well if you are a bit worried about the pace of keeping up with a mystery knit-along. You could just knit on half of the shawl for the duration of the knit-along, and then you can knit on the other half when you've finished. Okay, so following on from that, somebody else asked, how long will it take to knit each clue, and is the time needed the same amount each week? So the time needed to knit each week, I can't really answer that because obviously everybody knits at a different pace. People have different amounts of time free to knit in their week, but you will be knitting up approximately a quarter of the yarn each week. So that will be just less than 50 grams each week. And the clues are pretty equal in the amount of knitting that's to be done. I've tried to make it so that you've not got one week where there's loads and then you maybe fall behind. I've tried to make them pretty equal. So it is, if you're doing both halves simultaneously, you'll be knitting just under 50 grams of 4-ply fingering weight yarn each week. If you are just knitting on half, you'll be doing 25 grams. So if you know roughly how long that takes you to knit, maybe like a little shawl or something, usually you can maybe work out how long it will take you to do. I can't really answer that question because everybody is so individual. Another question was about what sort of level of knitter is it suitable for, and again that can be quite a hard one to answer. I would say if you're a pretty adventurous beginner, you can manage. I have designed it so that it's a bit of a progression of skill, so you're building on what you've learnt the previous week. But yeah, probably very adventurous beginner / intermediate knitter upwards. Then I was asked about changing the needle size. So I've knitted my samples, I've done 2 samples, and I've knitted them both with a 4mm needle. So what you need to do is just check your gauge. If you knit a swatch, there's swatching instructions in the information sheet. If you knit a swatch, you'll be able to check your gauge then. If you're not able to match the gauge that I had, then you might end up using more or less yarn. If it's going to come out smaller, I'm not sure that's going to work. So it's, it's up to you. It's your shawl, but the gauge is there for a reason, and it's to do with the drape of the fabric and how much yarn you're going to use and everything like that. So I would suggest do a swatch with the 4mm needles, which is suggested in the pattern, and see how you get on from there. What else? I was asked about whether pattern sock yarn would work for one of the colours. It's not. I find that as quite a hard question to answer because it depends if you're meaning, if it was like a self-striping sock yarn, I think that could work. But you might end up with quite a lot of pooling, where all the colours kind of start to stack up on top of each other in a blob, and then it will move across and it'll move across. That might happen, but it depends whether you like that or not. So that's a bit hard to answer. Sorry, that's not very helpful. Obviously, if that's the yarn that you've got and you want to try with it, then go for it. But as I say, I've designed the pattern to use one solid colour yarn and one speckled coloured yarn, and the 2 that have a really good contrast in tone. I was also asked about the shape of the shawl, which, to try and keep it a mystery, I can't really tell you. What I can tell you is that there is an option to make a slight variation in the shape. So each clue is split into the two halves. So when you've knitted the first half of the first clue, then you'll have the option to knit the second half to make a slightly a variation on the shape. Both shapes are really wearable. I've knitted one of each, and there's not a huge difference. The only difference is one version requires a little bit more thinking about, and the other version is slightly simpler to do. So it depends after the first half of clue one how you're feeling. If you're feeling quite confident about how it's going, then you might choose to do the one that requires a little bit more brain power. If you're feeling that you want something slightly less taxing, you might just do the other version. So you'll have to kind of see when you start clue one what you think. But it is just a variation in shape. It's not like dramatic. It's not like one's a triangular shawl and one's a crescent or anything like that. It's just a slight difference. But as I say, they're both very, very wearable shapes. Okay, and another question, these are sort of to do with the practicalities of the knit-along. The last one was to do with the Zoom knit nights. So if you've got the pattern, the information sheet has got a link for a Zoom knit night that we'll be doing every Friday in May. These are completely voluntary. It's not like I'm expecting you to turn up and I'm expecting to see your progress, like do my teacher face there. But if you'd like to come, it would be great. I'm sort of seeing that as being a bit of a kind of knit and natter thing, and also a place where people can ask for some help. So I think what I'm going to do is use the Zoom room facility and just kind of organise people into wee groups of sort of, I don't know, depends how many people, but sort of 6, 7, 8 people works quite well for a little group so that people can talk. And then perhaps I'll hang on to a group of people in one Zoom room, and I can help with anything or demonstrate something if people are stuck. So that's kind of how I'm envisaging that working. But I will probably send some more kind of details about that, or sort of guidelines of how it's going to work nearer to the time of the first clue. Celine's asking, do you need the same amount of wool for each variation? Yeah, they both use the same amount, so there's no difference in that regard. It's quite hard to explain without giving too much away. But yeah, one doesn't use more than the other, one of the shape variations. They both use the same amount of yarn. Okay, so some of the other questions that I was asked was more to do with the kind of the inspiration and the sort of things behind the design of the Mystery Knit-A-Long, which is quite hard to talk about without giving too much away. But what I thought I could show you is the swatches that didn't make it into the Mystery Knit-A-Long. So I've brought some of them with me. This might be quite interesting. So this is a little swatch of some stripes with a kind of slip stitch in between. But actually that's the kind of right side, but it looks much cooler on the wrong side. I quite like that. And hopefully I can remember how I did that so that I could use it in another design. But that didn't make it in to the Mystery Knit-A-Long. So that was one idea that got discarded. But what I usually do is I keep all these swatches and then I can come back to them. And that is actually how two of the clues in the shawl made it into the shawl, because I got a little bit stuck, to be honest. I made all these swatches and I couldn't work out how they were all going to come together, because one of my main concerns was that I wanted it to look like a cohesive design. I didn't want it to be too chopping and changing between the clues. So these are other ones that I've discarded, but I just couldn't, I liked them individually, but I couldn't quite get them to work together. So this is a bit more of a lacy one, with a stripe, a garter stitch stripe through the middle of the lace pattern. This one here was, this is a daisy stitch, so just different variations of that. So I couldn't quite get these to work as a cohesive design, so that's why they were scrapped. And then 2 of the clues, the ideas came from swatches that I'd done a while ago, and I was looking through. I've got a big bag of swatches, and I was looking through them and found these. So, and this is another swatch. This is a slip stitch pattern with little kind of like cables, and a little bit of a garter stitch stripe. It's a bit hard to make out. So it's still using a solid colour and a speckled, but that one also didn't make it into the final design. That's my little cat who's just come into the room. He's the smallest cat with the loudest meow. He's just jumped up. Are you coming to say hello? This is Max. He's very loud, but he's quite small. He'd be looking for his tea. Are you going to sit there? Okay, so yes, so that was that. Yeah, it's quite hard to talk about without giving too much away. But those are the things that those are the ones that got discarded. So I might use those another time. And somebody wanted to know about the inspiration for the shape. All I'll say there is that it is quite similar to other things that I have designed. If you've knitted any of my shawls, I do like knitting them in 2 halves and then joining them up. I do like that way of working. So that gives you a little bit of a clue. Okay, I'm planning. Someone asked, how long did it take to plan? Well, the yarn kits with the Fibre Fox, Georgie and I had been talking about it since last year, end of last year. And he's climbing all over everything. But probably since maybe about Christmas time or just after Christmas in the new year, I put together a mood board that I passed on to Georgie as kind of inspiration for the colours and also for the design. And then I had been working on it since probably since then, on and off. It takes me quite a wee while. I like to do a lot of swatching and then have a lot of thinking time, and sometimes you just need that time for your brain to work it out, and then all of a sudden you have this idea, and you try not to overthink it too much. And then the last question, because I don't think we've had any come up in the comments that I've not answered yet, so this is the last question. What is my favourite thing about the design? So that's probably going to be a better question to answer when the final clue comes out. But I'm really happy with the way that the clues are cohesive and that it works together, because that's what I was concerned about. And I was also concerned about keeping people's interest week to week, but also not giving people too much knitting to do and not giving away too much of the next clue in what in the previous clue. So trying to keep it quite open-ended, and people could still be guessing what's coming next. So I think that's my favourite thing. So hopefully I've managed to tick those boxes. We shall see. So the first clue comes out on May the 7th. If you haven't bought your copy yet, you can do that. My patterns are available via links on my website, which is maddieharveydesigns.com. And if you're signed up to my mailing list, you can get special early bird discount price. So you can sign up to that on the website as well. So Maddie Harvey Designs. And if you've bought the pattern, do come and join the Facebook group. Just remember to answer the questions and tick the wee box at the bottom. Otherwise, I won't be able to let you in. It's just a little thing to make sure everybody is safe and everybody agrees to the rules. So yeah, do come and join the Facebook group, because that's where the main community is happening. And if you're on Instagram, use the hashtag Trigpoint Shawl, and I will have a look at that. And if you've got any questions, you can tag me on social media, or if you're in the Facebook group, you can ask me there. Okay, I'm gonna let you get on with your Friday evening. I will see you soon. Okay, bye.